Yes, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a brand new video. This is your latest Arsenal news and transfer news as well. David Ornstein has just confirmed that Arsenal will be making signings late in the January transfer window as they're still assessing their position and they want to be careful. Nketiah could be out of Arsenal in this January transfer window. The Independent are saying Arsenal are looking at a striker and therefore Nketiah's future is in doubt as well. We'll be talking about Fabio Vieira and of course Gabriel Jesus, who are back in contention this week, and we might see them against Crystal Palace over on the weekend. And of course we'll be talking about that big update right there from David Ornstein on who Arsenal are going to be signing and where we are looking at. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel as well. It's been a very slow January in terms of what we expected. Arsenal not scoring goals, Arsenal struggling in front of goal. We thought probably Arsenal would sign a player by now, or at least by 15th, but that doesn't look like the case. Arsenal still very skeptical about the FFP situation. They're not yet sure who is going to be sold, when are we going to sell, and how much we are going to sell for, and therefore Arsenal want to be careful, and we are still being very careful. But of course there is a little bit of hope from David Ornstein that Arsenal are very active in the market. They are still very confident they can bring in someone before the end of January. Okay, so let's start off with the big one right from David Ornstein. They're saying that I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal ended up doing something reactive towards the end of the transfer window, purely because they are always attentive to the market. They are short in some places as well. That is David Ornstein on the David Ornstein transfers Q&A. They are responding to an Arsenal fan and what Arsenal are actually going to be doing in terms of the transfer window. So he says he won't be surprised if Arsenal do something really reactive towards the later parts of the window, first and foremost. But then he also says that they are very attentive to the market and they are also short in some places. Now, Mikel Arteta, of course, has come out before in the last two previous press conferences, and he said, at the moment, we want some players, we want some reinforcements. We want to improve the players we have, but then also, if there is something we can improve and we need a player from the market, we will go and fetch that player. So the transfer priority is in defense. According to him, that is where the squad is short. And David Ornstein says, keep your eyes open. Arsenal are very attentive and very active in this market. Now, I never expected Arsenal to take this long without at least one deal. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought by this time Arsenal would have signed maybe one player, and I thought that would be a striker or that would be a midfielder. But when it was made clear by the likes of Romano, by the likes of David Ornstein, that we are in a very bad financial situation, like the likes of Everton, like the Newcastles of this world, I understood it, and I think you will understand it as well. Arsenal don't want to put themselves in harm's way. Arsenal don't want to make a mistake that we are going to regret later. It doesn't make any sense for us to sign a player right now and then we get a 10-point deduction or a 20-point ban and get banned from the UEFA Champions League in 2025 or even in 2026. So that is what Arsenal are trying to avoid. We are trying to avoid those scenarios where you're literally at the best stage of your career as a club, and then you have FFP issues, and then you have financial fair play issues. But then secondly, it's the nature of the January transfer market. It's the nature of the window as well. So look at last January. And when did Arsenal make their signings? Of course, we did follow Mikhail Modric for quite some time. That did waste a lot of our chances and our time. But again, the deals that we did came at the end of the window, not at the beginning. Trossard, closer to the end. Jorginho, closer to the end, and Jakub Kiwior closer to the end. So that means that it's the nature of the January transfer window. A couple of clubs can do business early. If you want Jadon Sancho from Borussia Dortmund, an unwanted player, you can get him as early as January the 1st. If you want Donny van de Beek from Manchester United, an unwanted player, you can get him as early as you want. But when you want players that are contributing some significant effort and output to their teams, you've got to be patient. It's going to take some time. You're not going to go to Getafe and tell them, we want your main goal scorer. We have 20 million. Just give him to us. They're going to ask questions. They're going to try to keep him. They're going to try to block the move, and they're going to try to increase the price, right? And that's the beauty and the ugly side, I think, about January. It's a very good market because it allows you to strengthen in areas where you're clearly, you clearly have evidence that you're short and you're actually weak. So with Arsenal, it's the wings, it's the striking position, it's the defense, it's the fullback areas. But the ugly part of January is that you just can't go and point to Alphonso Davies. You can't point to Matthias de Ligt, and you get him. Why? Because these clubs want to keep their squads intact, and at this point in time, clubs have actually focused on what they're going to win and what they will not win. So with Arsenal, you're not winning the FA Cup, you're not winning the Carabao Cup as well. So you're focusing on the Champions League. So no one comes in January and says, give us Saka or give us William Saliba. We will give you 200 million. Even if you place 200 million, Arsenal will refuse it. It's in the middle of January. It's in the middle of the season, and therefore it's a risky deal to do. You can't replace Saliba in January. You can't replace Saka in January as well. So David Onstein says, keep your eyes very open to this Arsenal transfer season. It's going to be a late one. And then he also says, we will actually sign some players, especially at the back. So keep your eyes open on left back and right back signings. I think Mikel is desperate, really desperate, and very concerned about the wide areas. Zylan Timber is back on grass. That is a massive update, but he, as manager, he knows it. If the medical team says he can come back in February, as manager, you've got to give him another extra 3-4 weeks, right? Just to train well with his teammates, form the patterns, understand those patterns that the team has actually formed across 19, 20 games, or even 26 games if you want to include the UEFA Champions League. It's about 30 games in all competitions. So for Timber to come back and hit the ground running, it's going to take some time. So Mikel thinks, why don't I bring in someone who is ready to start training with the team right away? And probably by the time I summon him, by the time I want him to get into the starting 11, he's actually trained with the club enough, long enough, and he can actually do the job. Same thing we did with Jakub Nketiah. So I won't be surprised if Arsenal actually get in Leonardo Spinazzola. It's a very good deal. I mean, his contract runs down in the summer. He's 30, 31. Experience is there. He's naturally gifted and talented on both fullback areas. He can play as a left back. He can play as a right back. The evidence that he can play as a right back, he's played as a right back all his life, and he's been one of the exciting Italian right backs of our generation. When you look at for the evidence that he can play left back, go back and watch the Euros that Italy won against England in the final. He played as left back in those Euros, and he was clearly sensational. I think Luke Shaw was sensational in that tournament, but Leonardo Spinazzola, before picking up that nasty injury, best player in the tournament, one of the best players of that tournament, even after the injury. Now, the Independent are saying that Nketiah's future at Arsenal this January transfer window could slightly change. Now, the position of Mikel Arteta is clear. Nketiah is important and he is untouchable. However, that also depends on whether Arsenal sign a striker or not. If Arsenal getting a striker, then Nketiah's future at Arsenal could be coming to an end. So the Independent are literally saying that Arsenal in the market for a striker, and therefore that means that Nketiah could also be out of Arsenal this January transfer window. We have a couple of offers for Nketiah. It's either Arsenal are not sure we can replace him in January, or they don't think we can get enough money for Nketiah in January. But Crystal Palace are desperate. Look, I was even surprised that Arsenal are not willing to listen to any offers at the moment for Nketiah unless we sign a striker. Because Palace are desperate, Fulham are desperate, Brentford right now, I tell you, Brentford right now are absolutely desperate. If you told them Nketiah will cost you £45 million, they might not pay it, right? But they might actually consider it. And that is how desperate they are. Johan Wissa is not scoring goals. Brian Wemo has gone to the AFCON or has picked up an injury. One of those two, or even both of them, injury. Africans, we will call you, whether you have an injury or not, and you'll sit on the bench back home. And then Ivan Toney is the only striker they have at the moment, right? So if you offered them Eddie Nketiah, they might actually listen. But Mikel says he's an important player and he's not going anywhere unless we sign a striker. Same situation with Granit Xhaka. He doesn't go anywhere unless we get in a replacement. When we got Declan Rice and Kai Havertz, then Xhaka was allowed to go. But for me with Eddie, it's about him as a player. He's now turning 25. He's exactly very close to turning 27. And his career is not going to be a very long one. It might be kind of a long one, but it might turn out to be the Danny Welbeck kind of career. You understand? I don't think he's going to have the which striker has had a very good the Olivier Giroud. I don't think it's going to be like that. Then he travels to Milan, then he travels to Chelsea, those high profile clubs. I don't think it's going to be like Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, where he plays for PSG, he plays for Bayern as well. I'm looking at him as a player who leaves Arsenal for Crystal Palace, and then he leaves Crystal Palace for a club like Brighton, and then leaves Brighton, and then he goes to a club like Brentford. I think that is what his career is going to be. But if he wants to represent England again, if he wants to play for England again, the best solution and the best option is for him to go and find a club that is really going to give him the truth. That's number one, but also regular game time. I think Mikel Arteta is lying to Eddie, and Eddie knows it, right? I don't think Mikel has told him, you're just a backup player. You're not going to be playing a lot of football. You're just a backup player, so stay. Yes, he's earning good money. He's on good wages, but there is no truth at Arsenal about his role, right? I don't think I don't think the whole truth has been told to him, that we will sign a 100 million pound striker and you will stay back up forever. So for me, I think he goes to a club like Crystal Palace. Arsenal make good money, number one, like 40-45 million probably, or 30-35 in that range. You register that as purely 100% profit. And then Eddie goes to a club like Crystal Palace and finds his future and works on himself as a player. There is a player in there, but it's not a Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, Manchester United player. It's a Brighton, Brentford player, Crystal Palace. And he goes there and he will be comfortable and the pressure will come down and he will get chances. Imagine playing with the likes of Olise, Eberechi Eze, the likes of Dokore. I think there's a good team there. Tiote actually. I think there is a good team there at Crystal Palace. But I just don't understand why Eddie and his agents prefer to stay at Arsenal and become a Jesse Lingard, script, rather than creating their own path and, the player can actually have chances of even playing for England again. Now, Marquinhos has been recalled by Arsenal. That story has been moving around and it's kind of a sad one. So he went to Nantes on loan in the summer, but it looks like the loan has not actually worked out. So Arsenal have recalled him because he's not getting enough game time. He's not getting enough football. And the manager at Nantes has actually questioned the mentality of Marquinhos. He's questioned the mentality of the young Brazilian. So according to Fabrizio Romano, Arsenal are working on different ways to resolve the situation, either to keep him at the club until the end of the campaign or to send him on another loan deal. So those could be some of the options we are actually looking at. Either him going back out on loan or keeping him until the end of the campaign. For me, I think Marquinhos is one of those young players that Edu signs and you're not really convinced about his profile and you're not sure if he's going to become a star or he's actually... for me, he looks very ordinary and very basic. So I don't think he's a Gabriel Martinelli or a Bukayo Saka. I think he's a very ordinary, very basic player. And I wonder how Madrid are signing the likes of Rodrigo, Vinicius Jr., Tchouameni, Valverde, not really Tchouameni, but Valverde from South America. And we have a South American, sporting director, and he's not actually getting in those talents. Like, what is he doing? We should be the guys that are signing Matthias França, who's at Crystal Palace right now. We should be the guys. We should be competing with Manchester City, signing the likes of Julian Alvarez, all these talents that they have at the moment. We should be, fighting for the signature of these players and bringing them home. But for me, Marquinhos, the best thing to do is to go out on another loan deal, just to develop as a player. Probably you give him another 2 years, right? You extend his contract, keep on extending his contract. If he does well, you extend his contract. Arsenal could get some good money out of him. Arsenal could get some good money out of selling him. He's not a bad player at all, but I just think he's a very, very basic winger. Like, very, very basic. Now, according to Charles Watts, Fabio Vieira and Gabriel Jesus are back in full training, and we might see them against Crystal Palace on the 20th of this month. It is just around 7 days away or 6 days away before we play our next game in the Premier League. And according to Just Watch, those two are in contention to play. And lastly, David says that if Arsenal will not rush in this transfer window, they want to be very careful, they want to take it slow, and they will only attack the market if there is a right opportunity and they have weighed their chances and they have weighed their FFP position and they think they can actually go and do it. So hit the like button for me, subscribe to the channel. We'll be talking about Fabrizio Romano's stance on Ivan Toney, because it says there is something about Ivan Toney. Arsenal are not 100% off the Ivan Toney deal. So probably we might see Arsenal try to bite later in the evening of the January transfer window, and we could try to bite Brentford and get Ivan Toney. But of course, I'm going to be reporting all that in the next episode, so make sure you are tuned in.